Hello, everyone. It's Melina and
Jordan.
And we are the board certified baes. Welcome back.
We're back.
We're back and we're black. I'm just kidding.
What?
Anyways,
She's
how's
on.
everyone?
What is in that cup?
It's just coffee. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous.
Good. I'm glad.
And having a good time after hearing that.
Yeah. That's good.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I don't know. I'm good. No,
right.
No news is good news, I guess.
Yes, but I also hate that. But yes.
I know. I'm just like in this mode of like, okay, it's the new year. What do I have goals wise for myself? But like trying to make them realistic and not crazy. That's where I'm at.
All right. That makes sense. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm sure our listeners and viewers have the same thing.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out life.
Yeah. So that's all I'm thinking about
All right.
lately. How about you?
I don't know what I've been thinking about lately. It's been all over the place. It's like we're trying to plan a trip next year. We're trying to
Down under. So if anyone is there and you want to say hi to us,
as if it's
know.
not a big country.
It is a big country, but let us know. We'll be in Queensland.
Yeah, and maybe we can.
Which is also a big state. But
yeah, well, maybe we can do a podcast or something down there.
Yeah.
My whole accent will come back.
Any ABA people in Mackay?
Yeah, or Brisbane.
Or
Melbourne,
Brisbane. We'll be there for a
Sydney,
layover, I'm sure.
Or want to pay for us to fly down and talk to them.
Hey, listen.
Works too.
We will come.
Heck yeah.
So yeah.
It's a fun thing.
All the Aussie lovers out there, let us know if you're out there.
That's you.
Anyways.
All right. Anyway, today we are talking about schedules of reinforcement. It is something that is present whether we talk about it or we don't talk about it, but it is something that is on the test and something that people have a hard time with. Mm-hmm. But it is also something that we use all the time. And as BCBAs, we need to know what they are. Mm-hmm. And as RBTs and BTs and whatever language or acronym you give yourself,
yep,
we should know that. Or parents should just know what schedule is. Mm-hmm. So go ahead. What's a schedule of reinforcement?
What is a schedule of reinforcement?
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly what it says it is. It's how often an individual is being reinforced.
Okay. So how do we use them?
Depends. I know. I hate this. I'm like, don't ask me all the questions.
Shay's
I don't
being
know.
put on the spot.
No. How do we use them? It varies depending on what we're working on. That's kind of it. We pick them based on like how often someone should be reinforced for something. I don't know how to explain that better than that.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, go ahead. What?
You explain it better.
So, okay. Schedules of reinforcement. There are 4 main schedules.
That's why you always see him explaining because I get nervous. Go ahead.
I don't know why you're nervous though. So there are 4 main schedules of reinforcement that we use that are either time-based or product-based, meaning like how often something is done particularly. And why we use them or how we choose them is based on the task at hand. So we choose those based on what it is.
Based on the task at hand is what I said the first time.
Yeah. Based on what it is that we're working on, because there are a lot of things that we do work on in various ways. So it's just always important for us to pick a schedule that is going to be most beneficial to draw out that behavior that is going to keep a kiddo motivated for it. And that's kind of how we choose them. But they all come with a side effect, as you could imagine. And I'm not talking about side effect in terms of someone's going to break out in hives or something like that. Because
they could.
I mean,
I'm just kidding.
What?
I'm just kidding.
No, it sounds so bad. It's not true. But just in terms of what that does behaviorally, because for every action that we do have, there is a reaction, right? That could be excitement for like the motivator or the reinforcer or the preferred thing that's coming, or it could not be. And so we always have to assess those sorts of things. And before we dive into like what they are in terms of the schedules, you can also think about a preference assessment and a reinforcement assessment. A lot of times in the field, we talk about preference assessments and reinforcement and as reinforcement assessments, but they're not the same thing. Preference assessment is basically just identifying what somebody prefers. A reinforcement assessment is about how much work they will do for that item. And you have to know that information before you can put together a schedule of reinforcement, because then you might end up running into a side effect without knowing that you are.
Yeah.
So that's just important to note first. And if you aren't sure what a preference versus reinforcement assessment is and you want more clarification, just drop us a note. We'll get back to you. Or maybe we'll do a whole podcast on just the difference between those two. But over to you now, Melina. So you can tip off with the first one, which is an additional one to the original 4 that I said that we were going to have. So
got it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
What is the first schedule of reinforcement?
So the first one we will be talking about is continuous reinforcement.
Okay.
So continuous reinforcement is basically you reinforce every time the behavior happens. You're welcome. I'm just kidding. So usually I think of continuous reinforcement when we're starting with like a little baby, not little baby, but like little kiddo that is just learning the structure or learning to learn. We're teaching them, right? So it's like every single time we work on this thing, they're going to get reinforced so that they understand the contingency of like, okay, I'm doing something good. So that's when I think about using it the most, is like when it could be with little babies. I say little babies like my little baby who's just turned 3, but I think you can also use it for like teaching anything new. I think it's something that it's when we come in and we really want like a high level of reinforcers over and over and over again. It's like every time we want to make sure we catch the preferred behavior.
What was that face?
I don't know if that made sense.
No, it did make sense, because
if you have anything to add, go ahead and add.
That's exactly it. I mean, you are going to reinforce every time a behavior happens.
Yeah. What
that behavior is going to depend on what you're working on. So whatever it is. But there is like side effects.
Yeah. So with that being said, it almost becomes the expectation, right? The kid will, or individual will expect to get reinforced every time. So thinning a schedule can be tricky if not done correct, because then as soon as the reinforcement stops flowing as heavily as it was before, that behavior may dwindle as well.
Yeah. And that is hard. So, but you always run into this balance of, do I start fading now or do I start fading out later? And so there's usually this crucial time that we have to find that time.
There's a sweet spot that we got.
There is a sweet spot, and we have to find the sweet spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. What's the next one?
Do you want me to do the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a fixed ratio schedule. Okay. So what that means, so it's a FR, you'll see it. If you guys are in classes or like learning this, you'll see like FR and then a number after it. So fixed ratio means that you're going to give reinforcement for every occurrence of the behavior to a specific number. So if the behavior occurs 3 times, if it said FR3, which would be fixed ratio 3, which would mean every 3rd time that the behavior is present, they would then receive their reinforcement. So what this does is it helps to thin the schedule of reinforcement. So, and by thinning, it just means that it's not happening every single time. And the reward will come, but, there's time between them. So it's not just always there. But the problem with this one is, like we've done a whole episode on this before, is it brings out ratio strain, because what happens is we get greedy. As clinicians, as parents, we want to get more and more and more. And eventually we get to a point where they're like, no more, not doing it. I'm all done with this. So that's where like the ratio strain comes in. But what I want you guys to know is, like, when we're talking about fixed ratio, what the word fixed means is it's stuck. It's stuck at that number.
It's up and it's stuck.
Yeah. And then the ratio, that is the occurrence of the behavior. So whatever it is, if you were in school and you were doing math problems, it might be like FR5, and that is fixed ratio. So the number is stuck, and that would mean that every 5th time, because the ratio in this situation is math problems, every 5th math problem, client or the individual would receive some sort of reward. Maybe it's a break. They can put their head down, listen to music, whatever it is. But that's where the FR comes in. And that is fixed ratio.
Beautiful.
Is it?
Yeah.
Got anything you want to add?
No. No.
Not even one single thing?
No. I think that's great. I think you explained it perfectly.
All right. Well, then I will hand it to you for the next one.
Okay. Next up is variable ratio. So I think my brain automatically goes to / everyone else's is like a slot machine. You don't know when it's gonna reward you. So this is a good one when obviously there is contingency established. I think this is one that is great for a kid that has learned like, well, I only need to try every 3 times, then I'll get what I need, right? This is like, you got to be on it all the time because you don't know. You might get it this time, you might not. So yeah, it's basically you give a reward after the behavior happens, but the number of times it takes changes every time. So there is, I think it's like within a certain average though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like within an average of.
So the variable part means average.
There
So when we see variable ratio, so ratio is the same as it is for fixed in the sense that it's still the amount of occurrences for the behavior, but it's the average over a duration of time. So like if you're talking about a session, so overall in the session, there was the average of reinforcement every 3rd occurrence of the behavior, but that doesn't mean that every time you did it on the 3rd time, it just means that sometimes it was the 1st, sometimes it was the 10th, sometimes it was the 5th, sometimes it was the 7th, sometimes it was the 2nd, right? And then because of that, you add all those averages together, and I don't know my math right there, and you might end up with a variable ratio of 4. So which would mean on the average of every 4 times that a behavior occurred, they received their reward. And you're right with the slot machine example. I think that's the biggest highlight of it is because this is something that is the most powerful reinforcement schedule. It is the reason why things like gambling are big. You know, getting over an ex can be hard because you just don't know when they're going to text back, but you know they'll text back because you just keep texting. So eventually they'll text you back. And you just never know how many times it's going to take. So that keeps the energy alive.
Thank God for block.
Yeah. So, you know, you got to completely go ghost on them.
So, what are the side effects
of this?
Yeah, a variable ratio schedule.
They're resistant to change. So they're not resistant to change. They're resistant to extinction. So you can't really get rid of them because they just fall into that variable ratio. So a gambler could go days without winning. It's not going to change their behavior, despite how broke they are.
Yep.
Yeah.
We all know a guy.
Do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I guess we all do know somebody that's got difficulty in that area somewhere.
Yeah.
Or with something. But that is what? What were we just talking about?
Variable ratio.
There we go. Okay. Just checking to see if you're still alive.
I am. Okay. Next up, we're doing fixed interval schedule. Okay. So, would you like to explain it?
No, I'd like you to explain
Okay.
it.
All right. So, it's when you give a reward after a certain amount of time has passed, as long as the behavior happens.
Yeah, why'd you say it like that?
Because I want to make sure it was said right.
I mean, I'm not an expert in this.
You are.
No.
Literally, you are. Okay.
I didn't write a textbook.
So anyways, tell me if I'm wrong. Correct me.
You're wrong. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. You didn't even speak anything. How could you be wrong?
Because it just felt wrong. Okay, so
we have fun. Yeah.
We try, but Melina struggles sometimes. So it's just like, this is, again, I think the explanation part of it all, like, it gets nerve-wracking to me because of imposter syndrome.
Okay.
So anyways, okay. Fixed interval schedules. So basically, this happens a lot especially when it's like you're working with numerous students at a time, especially for teachers. It is harder for you to give as much attention for every single thing because you have like 20 other students, right? But in order to still make sure that you're giving reinforcement to a student, maybe if there is a fixed interval schedule of like 10, then it'd be 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes, I make sure I check in with that student, give them reinforcement, so they still feel encouraged. So obviously the 10 is interchangeable with other numbers as well. But yeah, so it's more around the time, right? Than it is amount of things that are happening, things like that. So.
Yep, absolutely. One of the things that is still present is fixed, which means that it's stuck on that certain number that comes after it. When we're talking about fixed interval, it's FI is going to be the like acronym that we use, and the I is interval. So interval is referring to time. Yep. As long as the behavior is showing, like you said, that is correct. You got it.
The tricky part about this, because we're talking about the things that can be negative with it, right? Say it's like 9 minutes and 30 seconds and then the kiddo acts out or something like that. It's right before the time they were supposed to get their reinforcement. So it can mess up the time that they're reinforced. Can you explain that?
It can, but you still give it to them the moment that the behavior occurs at the appropriate, like after the interval.
Right.
So that's fine. But
then it almost feels like,
yes, you get kids or clients that are very smart and in tune to time, and they can register and recognize how close they're getting to that based on the amount of work that they've done and so on and so forth. So yeah, it does become pretty predictable when you have anything that's fixed because it's stuck. You have to follow it in that schedule and the way that it is. But for those of you that are studying for your exam, fixed interval is the one that has the scalloping effect as the side effect, because if you can picture the shape of a scallop, it's a graph that kind of goes like this, that bubbles up. It's because you get a relaxed level after just receiving reinforcement, and then they recognize that their time is coming up to be able to be reinforced again, so then their responding and behavior starts shaping up again.
Yeah, can I give a real life example?
Which absolutely can.
You know how people have like quarterly reviews at work, things like that. So maybe in the interim, you're kind of doing whatever, laissez, blah, 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 kind of being lazy at work. But then, you know, the review's about to come. You want that pay raise. So all of a sudden, you showing up and showing out.
You start tightening shit. That's right.
Or with students and their grades. You know, we start off strong, sure. But then we get a little bit lazy. Oh, but finals are around the corner. Now I got to shape them back up so we make sure we get a good grade in this class.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. It happens for basically everything. Yeah. So, cool. So moving on to the next one, which is the last one of the 5 today.
What is it? And can you explain?
Can anybody predict what it would be based on what we've already discussed? Probably. So we're talking about variable interval. So variable, again, meaning the average, and then interval, meaning time. So it is a variable interval, whatever number there. So it's the average of time that you're looking for that interval. So it might be, you gave the example with 10 for the last one. So it might be a variable interval of 10, which means that at the end of working with that individual for that day, however long that might be, they were reinforced on the average of every 10 minutes. But sometimes it can be 3 minutes, sometimes it can be 10 minutes, sometimes it could be 20 minutes, sometimes it could be 1 minute. It doesn't really matter as long as the average works out to be there. So, teachers can do this in class where they're working on the average and just, giving it whenever they think about it. And then at the end of the day, they might have an average of every 15 minutes that a kiddo was reinforced, or like the kids in the classroom were. But this one does create a side effect as well. And then it's low, steady responding, right? So this isn't the stairway one of the graph. I'm trying to think of the graphs as well. Because I think that is the fixed, ratio that does that. But what you do is kids will just stay complacent and they will just respond and not try any harder or any less because they know reinforcement's coming. They don't know when, but the time doesn't really matter to them. They're not really interested. So, but these are all present throughout our lives everywhere. Whether we choose to do them or choose to acknowledge them, they exist. Right? Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think that is true. I think that even as parents, we utilize probably all of these.
Oh yeah,
with
100%.
With our little ones. Little one, other one's too little, but
100%. We use these all the time.
Yeah, and with each other too.
Yep.
I would say not really any of them besides like the like variable ratio. Like I don't know if we've do we have set reinforcement schedules for each other? I don't think so.
No, we've never set any.
No, because we
are on a variable one, and that just kind of keeps us excited.
Keeps it
because
alive.
It's resistant to extinction.
There you go.
It's like I never know when she's going to give me a hug, so I just know it's going to happen though. I just don't know how many times I have to wash the dishes to do it. To get it, I just don't know.
So anyways, that's how you keep the love alive, everyone.
Yeah.
That's really what we wanted to tell you.
Yeah. Well, that's schedules of reinforcement. That's how they work. That's how we can apply them. And they exist everywhere. And that's what you should know. So.
Well, thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you.
Let's see. Fun question. If you could be any mammal other than a human, have I already asked this one? What would you be?
Dolphin.
Yeah, I think I've asked you this, but maybe not on here.
Do you have an answer?
I'd be a marsupial of some sort.
Winnie the Pooh.
He's not a marsupial, but sure. If he could be, I would choose that. Okay. All right, guys. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, guys.